Hey there, welcome to Busy Horse channel, where amazing stories never stop. If you crave mind-blowing surprises, epic drama, and perfect revenge moments, you are in the right place. Subscribe today and jump into tales that will leave you speechless, laughing, and wanting more. Incredible characters, unbeatable twists, and super satisfying endings. That's what Busy Horse channel brings you every single time. Smash that bell and let's dive in.
He left his toy. I'm just playing with it.
The divorce papers were supposed to arrive next Tuesday. Instead, I found my wife's sister living in our guest room with her 3 kids and a boyfriend I'd never met. Bernice stood in our kitchen like she owned the place, arms crossed, that smug look I'd grown to hate plastered across her face. "Eugene, we need to talk," she said, not even looking up from her phone where she was texting someone. Probably her CrossFit trainer, Troy, the tattooed musclehead she'd been sneaking around with for months. I set down my toolbox. After 12 hours fixing broken air conditioners in this Texas heat, the last thing I needed was another one of Bernice's family drama sessions. But there was something different in her voice today. Something that made my stomach twist. "What's this about, Bernice?" She finally looked up and I saw it. That cold, calculating expression she got when she was about to drop a bomb. 23 years of marriage, and I knew all her tells. "The boys are coming over tonight for your birthday party." My 50th birthday? Right, I'd almost forgotten with all the overtime I'd been pulling to keep this household afloat. Salvador, Franklin, and Damien are 3 sons who'd grown into entitled, ungrateful men who only called when they needed money. "That's nice," I said, opening the refrigerator to grab a beer. "What's the occasion? Someone need another loan?" "Actually, Eugene, we've been talking, all of us, about your situation." I paused, beer halfway to my lips. "My situation?" Bernice's sister Carmen piped up from the living room where she was sprawled on my couch, her boyfriend's arm draped around her shoulders. "He doesn't know, does he?" "Know what?" I looked between them, that sick feeling in my gut getting worse. Bernice sighed dramatically. "Eugene, this isn't working anymore. This marriage, this family dynamic, you're holding everyone back." I laughed. Actually laughed. Holding everyone back? I'm the one paying for Salvador's real estate license, Franklin's gambling debts, and Damien's college tuition. I'm the one working 60-hour weeks while you spend your days at the gym with your boyfriend. Her face flushed red. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. You're bitter, Eugene. Resentful. The boys see it, I see it, everyone sees it." "The boys?" I took a long drink of beer. "Let me guess, they're part of this intervention too?" "They'll be here at 7. We rented the back room at Murphy's Brewery. Invited some friends." "Friends? Right. Bernice's gym crew, Shay and Mindy, 2 gossip-hungry women who treated other people's misery like entertainment. My buddy Harold from the auto shop would probably be there too, though he'd been acting weird lately, distant. So this is an ambush?" "This is an opportunity," Bernice said, her voice taking on that fake sweet tone she used when she wanted something. "For you to hear some hard truths and maybe make some changes." I finished my beer and crushed the can. "What kind of changes?" Carmen's boyfriend, I think his name was Derek, spoke up for the first time. "Maybe you should hear it from them tonight, man. We're just trying to help." "Help?" From a guy who'd been living in my house for 2 weeks without paying a dime in rent or even offering to help with groceries. I looked at him, 20-something, covered in tattoos, wearing a tank top that showed off muscles he probably built while I was at work supporting his girlfriend's kids. "Right. Help." I headed toward the stairs. "I'll be ready at 7. But I was already planning something else entirely. Murphy's Brewery was packed for a Thursday night. I arrived exactly on time, wearing my cleanest work shirt and jeans. The back room was decorated with balloons and a banner that read, "Happy 50th Eugene," in letters that looked like they'd been drawn by a 5-year-old. My 3 sons were already there, huddled around a table with Bernice. Salvador looked uncomfortable in his expensive suit, the one I'd helped him buy for his real estate job. Franklin was nursing what looked like his 3rd beer already, his eyes red and nervous. Damien, my youngest, wouldn't meet my eyes. "Dad!" Salvador stood up first, forcing a smile. "Happy birthday, old man." "Thanks, son." I shook his hand, noting how soft it was compared to mine. "How's the real estate business?" Good. Sold 2 houses last month." I nodded, not mentioning that I knew he'd only sold 1 house in the past 6 months. Harold had told me. Harold's wife worked at the same agency. Speaking of Harold, he was sitting at the bar talking to Shay and Mindy. When he saw me, he raised his beer in a half-hearted salute. Something was definitely off with him. "Eugene!" Mindy practically shouted across the room. "Happy birthday, honey!" 50 years young? Shay laughed. More like 50 years tired from the look of him. The room went quiet for a second. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I forced a smile. "Well, some of us work for a living." "Oh, come on," Mindy said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "We're just playing around. You know we love you." Bernice appeared at my elbow. "Why don't you sit down, Eugene? We got you a cake." The cake was store-bought chocolate with vanilla frosting, the kind I told her a dozen times I didn't like. But I sat down and let them sing happy birthday, watching their faces in the candlelight. There was something rehearsed about all of this, planned. After I blew out the candles, Salvador cleared his throat. "Dad, we wanted to talk to you about something." Here it comes, I thought. "Go ahead. We've been thinking, all of us, about the family, about relationships and expectations and, well, about respect." I looked around the table. Franklin was staring into his beer. Damien was picking at the label on his bottle. Bernice was watching me with those cold eyes. "What about respect, Salvador?" "Well, it's just that you've been pretty negative lately. Critical. Mom says you make her feel bad about herself, about her interests and her friends." I glanced at Bernice. "Her interests? You mean her boyfriend?" The table went dead silent. Even the background noise from the main bar seemed to fade away. Franklin finally looked up. "Dad, come on. You know that's not..." "Not what? Not true." I kept my voice level. "Your mother has been screwing her personal trainer for 6 months, and you want to lecture me about respect?" Bernice's face went white, then red. "Eugene, you're being ridiculous. Troy is just a friend who texts you at midnight, a friend whose car I've seen in our driveway when I come home early from work, a friend who knows what kind of underwear you prefer." Shay and Mindy exchanged glances. Harold was suddenly very interested in his beer. Salvador leaned forward. "Dad, even if that were true..." "Even if?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Son, I've got photos, time-stamped. Your mother's not as sneaky as she thinks." Bernice stood up abruptly. "This is exactly what we're talking about, Eugene. This paranoid, controlling behavior. You're driving everyone away." "I'm driving everyone away?" I stood up too, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm the one working overtime to pay for Franklin's gambling debts. I'm the one who co-signed Salvador's mortgage. I'm the one paying Damien's tuition while you spend your days getting personal training from a guy young enough to be your son." "That's enough," Franklin said, his voice slurred. "You don't get to talk to Mom like that." "Don't I? In case you forgot, Franklin, I'm still married to her. And I'm still the one paying for this little party." That's when Harold stood up. My best friend for 15 years, the guy who'd been my best man, who'd helped me move into this house, who'd been there for every birthday, every crisis, every celebration. "Eugene," he said quietly, "maybe you should listen to what they're trying to tell you." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "Harold? You've changed, man, over the past couple of years. You're angry all the time, suspicious. Bernice came to me a few weeks ago crying. She was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of you, of your temper, of what you might do." The room was spinning. I looked around at all these people, my family, my friends, and saw the truth in their faces. They'd planned this, all of it. The birthday party was just the setup. "So this is an intervention," I said slowly. Bernice sat back down, her voice gentler now. "We want to help you, Eugene. We think you should talk to someone. Maybe take some time apart, figure out what you really want." "What I want?" I felt a laugh building in my chest, dark and bitter. "What I want is to not be treated like an ATM by my own family. What I want is a wife who doesn't lie to my face every day. What I want is friends who don't conspire behind my back." "Dad," Damien spoke for the first time, "we're not conspiring. We're worried about you." I looked at my youngest son, 23 years old, smart as heck, but naive. He actually believed this was about helping me. "Damien, let me ask you something. When's the last time you called me just to talk? Not to ask for money, not because your mother told you to, but just to see how I was doing?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. That's what I thought. I pulled out my wallet and threw 2 20s on the table. "Thanks for the birthday party. Really, it's been enlightening." I was halfway to the door when Salvador called out, "Dad, wait, there's one more thing." I stopped, but didn't turn around. We've decided to change our names, legally, Franklin, Damien, and me. We don't want to be Wilsons anymore. The room was dead quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. What name are you changing to? Henderson, Mom's maiden name. I turned around slowly. All three of my sons were looking at me with a mixture of defiance and shame. Bernice was crying. Real tears this time, not the crocodile tears she used when she wanted something. You want me to sign off on that? Salvador nodded. The papers are in the car. I looked around the room one more time, at Harold, who couldn't meet my eyes, at Shay and Mindy, who were practically vibrating with excitement at the drama, at my wife of 23 years, who'd just convinced my own children to disown me. Bring me the papers. 20 minutes later, I signed away my sons' names. My legacy. The Wilson family line that would die with me. But as I walked out of Murphy's brewery, something else was being born. Something cold and calculating and patient. They wanted a villain? I'd show them one. I didn't go home that night. Instead, I drove to the office Wilson HVAC Services, the business I'd built from nothing over 20 years. I had a cot in the back room for those times when I had to work through the night on emergency calls. I sat in my desk chair and stared at the wall covered with certificates, awards, and photos. 20 years in business, hundreds of satisfied customers, a reputation built on hard work and integrity. And my own family had just voted me out of their lives. I opened my laptop and started making lists. Not revenge fantasies, I'm not that kind of man. But practical lists, financial lists, legal lists, lists of who owed me what, who had access to what, who depended on me for what. The numbers were staggering. In the past 5 years alone, I'd given Salvador $43,000 for his real estate license, his car, his mortgage down payment, and various emergencies. Franklin had cost me 67,000 gambling debts, DUI lawyer fees, rehab that didn't work, and more emergencies. Damien was the cheapest at $31,000 for college tuition and expenses. Then there was Bernice. Joint credit cards, joint bank accounts, joint everything. She'd been spending money like water gym memberships, personal training sessions, new clothes, spa treatments, dinners out with her friends. I pulled up our bank statements and started going through them, line by line. What I found made my stomach turn. Charges at expensive restaurants on days when she told me she was working late. Hotel charges in the next town over. Purchases at Victoria's Secret when she hadn't bought me anything for our anniversary. Cash withdrawals that coincided with Troy's social media posts about date nights and romantic getaways. But the worst part wasn't the money. It was the pattern. The systematic lying, the calculated deception, the way she'd turned my own children against me to cover her tracks. My phone buzzed. A text from Harold. Eugene, I'm sorry about tonight. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time before responding. Talk about what? About how you helped my wife plan an ambush? About how you've been listening to her lies for weeks without saying a word to me? We're done, Harold. His response came immediately. It's not like that. She was scared, man. Really scared. She said you've been following her, going through her phone, making threats. Threats. I laughed out loud in the empty office. The only threat I'd ever made was to cut off her credit cards if she didn't start being honest about where the money was going. But I could see how she'd spun it. Poor Bernice, trapped with an increasingly paranoid and controlling husband. Poor Bernice, just trying to find some happiness and independence. Poor Bernice, afraid for her safety. It was brilliant, actually. She'd managed to position herself as the victim while systematically destroying our marriage and turning everyone against me. I typed back. Harold, in 15 years of friendship, have you ever known me to make threats against anyone? Have you ever seen me raise my hand to Bernice or anyone else? Have you ever seen me be anything but generous to my family and loyal to my friends? The response took longer this time. No, but people change. Stress can make people do things they never thought they'd do. You're right, I typed. Stress can make people do things they never thought they'd do. But I'm not the one who changed Harold. I'm just the one who finally woke up. I put the phone away and went back to my lists. By sunrise, I had a plan. The first step was the easiest. I called my lawyer at 8 a.m. sharp. Jim, it's Eugene Wilson. I need to see you today. It's urgent. Jim Morrison had been handling my business legal work for 10 years. He was straightforward, no nonsense, and he didn't ask unnecessary questions. What's the situation, Eugene? Divorce, and I need to protect my assets before my wife finds out I'm filing. How much time do we have? She thinks I'm having a breakdown. She's probably planning to take her time, maybe push me into therapy, keep me off balance while she figures out her next move. So maybe a week or two. That's enough. Come in at 10. Bring everything, bank statements, property deeds, business records, the works. By noon, we had a strategy. Texas is a community property state, but there are ways to protect assets if you're smart about it. And if you have documentation of financial infidelity. These hotel charges and restaurant bills, Jim said, studying the bank statements. If you can prove she was using marital funds for an affair, that's dissipation of assets. We can go after her for reimbursement. I can prove it. Good. What about the boys? I told him about the name change, about the intervention, about the systematic campaign to paint me as the villain. Jim whistled low. Parental alienation. That's serious stuff, Eugene. Even with adult children. If we can show a pattern of manipulation and lies designed to damage your relationship with them, it affects everything. Custody, support, property division. I don't want custody. They made their choice. You might feel differently later. Right now, you're hurt and angry. But these are your sons. I thought about that. Were they still my sons if they didn't want to be Wilsons anymore? If they'd chosen to believe their mother's lies over 23 years of me being there for them? What about my business? That's separate property as long as we can show you built it before the marriage and maintained it with separate funds. Which you did. She might be entitled to some appreciation and value, but the core business stays yours. That was a relief. Wilson HVAC was my life's work. The idea of Bernice getting half of it made me physically sick. One more thing, Jim. I want to cut off financial support to the boys immediately. Can I do that legally? They're adults. You have no legal obligation to support them. Cancel the credit cards, stop the payments, close any joint accounts. Just document everything in case they try to claim you're doing it out of spite rather than financial necessity. Spite. Right. As if wanting to stop paying for people who just disowned me was unreasonable. I spent the rest of the day at the bank, at the credit card companies, at the phone company. By 5 p.m., I'd cut off every financial lifeline I'd been providing to my family. The credit cards were canceled. The auto pay for Salvador's mortgage was stopped. Franklin's monthly allowance was terminated. Damien's tuition payment for the fall semester was put on hold. I also opened new accounts at a different bank and transferred my business income there. Bernice would still have access to our joint accounts, but there wouldn't be much left in them after I moved my money. Then I drove home to see what would happen. Bernice was in the kitchen when I walked in, still wearing her gym clothes. She looked up when I entered, and I could see the calculation in her eyes. She was trying to figure out how to play this. Eugene, she said carefully, how are you feeling today? I'm feeling clear, I said. Clearer than I felt in months. She relaxed slightly. That's good. I was worried about you last night. You seemed so upset. I was upset. Finding out your wife has been cheating on you and your children want to change their names tends to be upsetting. Her face hardened. Eugene, we've been over this. Troy is just a friend. Right. I opened the refrigerator and grabbed a beer. Bernice, I have a question for you. A hypothetical question. Okay. If you found out I'd been lying to you for months, spending our money on another woman, turning the boys against you, and planning to leave you, what would you do? She was quiet for a long moment. I don't know. I'd be hurt. Angry. Would you fight back? What do you mean? Would you just roll over and take it, or would you fight back? She was looking at me like I was a snake that might strike at any moment. Eugene, you're scaring me. I'm not going to hurt you, Bernice. I've never hurt you, and I never will. But I'm not going to just roll over and take it either. My phone started ringing. Salvador. Hi, Dad. Listen, there's a problem with my mortgage payment. The bank called and said the auto pay was canceled. Silence. What? Why? Because I canceled it. Dad, you can't just... Actually, Salvador, I can. You're not a Wilson anymore, remember? You made that very clear last night. Dad, come on, that was just paperwork. It doesn't change anything between us. Doesn't it? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you and your brothers decided you don't want me as a father anymore. So I'm respecting your decision. Bernice was watching me with wide eyes. Dad, please. I can't afford the mortgage without your help. You know that. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to change your name. I hung up. The phone immediately rang again. Franklin this time. Dad, what the heck? My credit card got declined. I canceled it. You can't do that. I have expenses. So get a job. I have a job. Part-time at a liquor store doesn't count as a job, Franklin. It's barely a hobby. Dad, you're being unreasonable. Mom said you were having some kind of breakdown, but this is crazy. Your mother said I was having a breakdown? She's worried about you. We all are. She thinks you need professional help. I looked at Bernice, who was backing toward the door. Put your mother on the phone. She's not here. She's at the gym. No, Franklin. She's standing right here in our kitchen, listening to every word. Bernice, your son wants to talk to you. I held out the phone. She shook her head. Bernice doesn't want to talk right now, Franklin. She's too busy planning her next move. But you can tell her something for me. Dad, tell her that I know about the hotel charges. I know about the cash withdrawals. I know about the credit card bills for dinners I never ate and trips I never took. Tell her that I've been to see a lawyer and I've been to the bank and I've been very, very busy today. I hung up and looked at Bernice. You want to leave me, I said. Fine, leave. But you're not going to destroy me on your way out. And you're not going to use my own children as tools against me. She found her voice. Eugene, you're not thinking clearly. You're making decisions you'll regret. The only thing I regret is not making them sooner. My phone rang again. Damien. Dad? Franklin called me. He said you canceled everything. The tuition payment, the credit cards, everything. That's right. But Dad, school starts in 2 weeks. If the tuition isn't paid, then you'll have to find another way to pay it. Student loans, maybe. Or a job. Dad, please. I know last night was hard, but we can work this out. We're family. Family. The word hit me like a punch to the gut. Damien, let me ask you something. When you signed those papers last night, when you decided you didn't want to be a Wilson anymore, did you think about what that meant? It's just a name, Dad. No, son, it's not just a name. It's everything I built, everything I worked for, everything I am. And you threw it away because your mother convinced you I was the problem. Dad, I love you, Damien. I love all of you boys. But love isn't enough anymore. You made your choice last night. Now I'm making mine. I hung up and turned off the phone. Bernice was staring at me. What have you done? What I should have done months ago. I've stopped being a doormat. She pulled out her own phone and started dialing. Troy, can you come over? Now? Eugene he's having some kind of episode. I finished my beer and headed for the stairs. Tell Troy to park on the street. I don't want him dripping oil on my driveway. Troy arrived 20 minutes later in his ridiculous lifted truck with the monster tires and the exhaust pipes that sounded like a freight train. He was exactly what I'd expected. 6'2", covered in tattoos, wearing a tank top that showed off his gym-built muscles. He swaggered up to my front door like he owned the place. I was waiting for him on the porch. You must be Eugene, he said, his voice carrying that fake friendly tone that barely concealed the threat underneath. Bernice is worried about you, man. Is she? Yeah. She says you've been acting strange lately, making accusations, threatening people. I leaned back in my porch chair. What people have I threatened, Troy? He shifted his weight, and I could see him trying to decide how to play this. He was used to intimidating people with his size, but something in my voice was throwing him off. Look, man, I'm just here to help. Bernice called me because she was scared. Scared of what? Of you, of what you might do. I stood up slowly. Troy was bigger than me, younger than me, stronger than me, but I'd been working with my hands for 30 years, and I'd been angry for 6 months. Sometimes that's enough. Troy, I'm going to give you some free advice, man to man. Yeah? Get in your truck and drive away right now. Don't come back to my house. Don't answer my wife's phone calls. Don't text her. Don't think about her. Just disappear? He laughed. Or what? Or I'll make your life very, very complicated. You threatening me, old man? No, I'm promising you. He took a step closer, trying to use his size to intimidate me. You know what your problem is, Eugene? You can't handle the fact that your wife found someone better. Someone who can actually satisfy her. That's when I hit him. I'm not proud of it. I'm 50 years old, and I should know better than to let some punk half my age goad me into a fight. But the comment about satisfying my wife, after everything else that had happened, was the last straw. I didn't throw a punch. I slapped him, hard, across the face, the way you'd slap a disrespectful child. The sound echoed across the neighborhood like a firecracker. Troy stumbled backward, more from surprise than pain. His hand went to his cheek, and I could see the red handprint I'd left there. You son of a witch, he said, his voice shaking with rage. Get off my property. This isn't over. Yes, it is. He looked like he wanted to take a swing at me, but Something in my eyes stopped him. Maybe it was the fact that I'd hit him first. Maybe it was the realization that I wasn't the broken-down old man he'd expected. Or maybe it was the sound of my neighbor's door opening. Mrs. Patterson from next door was standing on her porch with her phone in her hand, clearly recording everything. "Is everything all right over there, Eugene?" she called out. "Everything's fine, Mrs. Patterson. Troy was just leaving." Troy looked at the phone, then at me, then at the growing audience of neighbors who'd come out to see what the commotion was about. "This isn't over," he said again, but the fight had gone out of his voice. "Yes, it is," I repeated. "And if you come back here, if you contact my wife, if you so much as drive down this street again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing and harassment. Are we clear?" He got in his truck and drove away, but not before revving the engine loud enough to wake the dead. I waved to Mrs. Patterson. "Sorry about the noise." "Don't apologize, honey. That boy had it coming." I went back inside to find Bernice standing in the hallway, her face white as a sheet. "You hit him," she said. "I slapped him. There's a difference. Eugene, you can't just..." "Can't what? Defend my home? Protect my marriage? Stand up for myself? He could have you arrested. For what? Slapping someone who was trespassing on my property and making lewd comments about my wife? Good luck with that." She sank down onto the couch. "What's happened to you?" I sat down across from her. "Nothing's happened to me, Bernice. I'm exactly the same man I've always been. The only difference is that I'm not pretending anymore." "Pretending what?" "Pretending that I don't know what's been going on. Pretending that I'm okay with being lied to and cheated on and disrespected. Pretending that I'm going to just sit here and let you destroy everything we built together." She was crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones she used for manipulation. "I never meant for it to happen," she said. "With Troy, it just happened." "When? What? When did it start? I want to know exactly when my wife decided to throw away 23 years of marriage for a gym rat with an IQ smaller than his bicep measurement." She flinched. "It's not like that. He makes me feel alive again, young, beautiful. And I don't..." "You make me feel old, Eugene. Old and tired and trapped. When's the last time you told me I was beautiful? When's the last time you took me somewhere nice, bought me flowers, made me feel special?" I stared at her. "When's the last time you gave me a reason to? When's the last time you smiled when I came home from work? When's the last time you asked about my day, or cooked my favorite meal, or acted like you were glad to see me? That's different." "How is it different?" "Because you're my husband. You're supposed to love me no matter what. And you're my wife. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" She was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "I want a divorce." "I know. I've already filed the papers." Her head snapped up. "What?" "This morning. My lawyer will serve you tomorrow." "You can't do that. We need to talk about this, work things out." "Work what out, Bernice? You've been cheating on me for months. You turned my own children against me. You had them change their names. What exactly is there to work out? The house, the money, the business, all taken care of. You'll get what the law says you're entitled to. Nothing more, nothing less." She stood up, her face flushed with anger. "You bastard. You planned this whole thing." "No, Bernice, you planned this whole thing. I'm just responding to it." My phone started ringing. Harold. I almost didn't answer it, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Harold?" "Eugene, I just heard about what happened with Troy." "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." "Look, I know you're mad at me about last night, but mad doesn't begin to cover it, Harold. Eugene, please, let me explain. Bernice came to me 3 weeks ago, crying. She said you'd been following her, going through her phone, making threats. She was scared. And you believed her. She had bruises on her arms, Eugene. Fingerprint bruises." I felt the world tilt. "What bruises?" "On her upper arms. Like someone had grabbed her hard." I looked at Bernice, who was listening to every word. "Bernice, show Harold your arms." She backed away from me. "Eugene, show him your arms, Bernice. Show him these bruises I supposedly gave you." She was shaking her head. "Harold," I said into the phone, "ask Bernice to show you the bruises she showed you 3 weeks ago." There was a long pause. "Bernice, can you..." "Eugene says you should show me." I could hear the confusion in his voice. "She can't show you, Harold, because there are no bruises. There never were any bruises." "But I saw them." "You saw what she wanted you to see. Makeup, maybe, or bruises from her boyfriend's rough hands." But not from me. In 23 years of marriage, I have never laid a hand on my wife in anger. Never. Another long pause. Bernice, is that true? I could see the panic in her eyes. Her whole victim narrative was falling apart. Harold, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's complicated. No, I said. It's not complicated at all. She's been lying to you, Harold, just like she's been lying to everyone else, just like she lied to our sons to turn them against me. I hung up the phone and looked at my wife. How long were you planning to keep this up, Bernice? How long were you going to play the victim while you destroyed my life? She collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing. I didn't know what else to do. I wanted out, but I was scared of what you'd do if you found out about Troy. So you decided to make me the villain. I thought if everyone believed you were dangerous, unstable, then when I left, they'd understand. They'd support me. And our sons? Did you think about what this would do to them? Having to choose between their parents based on lies? I thought they'd be better off with me. I sat down across from her again. Bernice, do you have any idea what you've done? Do you understand that you've destroyed our family based on a lie? She looked up at me, mascara running down her cheeks. What are you going to do? I thought about that. What was I going to do? I'd already filed for divorce, cut off the money, confronted her boyfriend, and exposed her lies to Harold. But it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth, I said finally. What does that mean? It means your little victim act is over. It means the people you lied to are going to find out what really happened. It means there are going to be consequences. She looked terrified. Eugene, please. Please what? Please let you keep lying? Please let you keep playing the victim while I'm painted as the villain? Please let you walk away with half of everything I've worked for while everyone thinks you're some kind of hero for leaving your manipulative husband? I'll tell them the truth. I'll tell everyone I lied. Yes, you will. But not because you want to, because you have to. I stood up and headed for the door. Where are you going? Out. When I come back, I want you gone. Pack your things and go stay with your sister or with Troy or in a hotel. I don't care where, but don't be here when I get back. Eugene, wait! But I was already gone. I drove around for 2 hours, thinking, planning. By the time I got home, Bernice's car was gone and the house was quiet. She'd taken some clothes and personal items, but most of her stuff was still there. I made myself a sandwich and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. It was time for phase 2. I started with social media. Bernice was active on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. She loved posting photos of herself at the gym, at restaurants, on little weekend trips. What she didn't know was that I'd had access to all her accounts for years. She'd given me the passwords herself when she wanted me to post something for her business. I scrolled through months of posts, taking screenshots. Here was a photo of her at an expensive restaurant on a Tuesday afternoon when she'd told me she was working late. Here was a picture of her at a hotel pool when she'd said she was at a women's retreat. Here was a cozy selfie with Troy at a bar when she'd claimed to be having dinner with her sister. The timestamps told the whole story. The lies, the deception, the systematic betrayal. But I wasn't going to post them. Not yet. First, I had some visits to make. I started with Harold. He lived 10 minutes away in a modest ranch house with his wife, Linda. They'd been married almost as long as Bernice and I had, and Linda had always been friendly to both of us. Harold answered the door looking sheepish. Eugene, I wasn't expecting you. We need to talk. He stepped aside to let me in. Linda was in the living room and she stood up when she saw me. Eugene, how are you holding up? I'm fine, Linda. Actually, I'm better than I've been in months. Harold sat down heavily. Eugene, about what happened on the phone. You believed her, I said simply. My best friend of 15 years believed that I was beating my wife based on nothing but her word and some mysterious bruises that don't exist. She was very convincing. She's a liar, Harold. A systematic, calculating liar who has been planning this for months. I pulled out my phone and showed them the screenshots I'd taken. The restaurant photos, the hotel pictures, the cozy selfies with Troy. Linda's hand went to her mouth. Oh my God. This is just the tip of the iceberg, I said. I've got bank records, credit card statements, text messages. She's been living a double life for months while painting me as the villain. Harold was staring at the photos. Eugene, I'm so sorry. You should have known me better than that. In 15 years of friendship, have you ever seen me raise my hand to anyone? Have you ever seen me be anything but gentle with Bernice? No, never. But you believed her anyway. He nodded miserably. She was crying, Eugene. She seemed so scared. She's an actress, Harold, and she played you perfectly. Linda was still looking at the photos. These are all recent? The past 6 months. While she was telling everyone I was becoming paranoid and controlling, she was sneaking around with her boyfriend and spending our money on their affair. What are you going to do? Harold asked. I'm going to make sure everyone knows the truth, starting with you two. I spent an hour with them, showing them the evidence, explaining what had really been happening. By the time I left, they were both furious at Bernice for lying and at themselves for believing her. Is there anything we can do? Linda asked. Just tell people the truth. When they ask about the divorce, when they repeat Bernice's lies about me being dangerous or unstable, tell them what you know now. My next stop was Shay's house. She lived in a newer subdivision across town, in one of those cookie-cutter houses that all look the same. Her husband answered the door. Eugene, what brings you by? Hi, Mike, is Shay home? I need to talk to both of you about something. Shay appeared behind him, looking nervous. Eugene, how are you doing? I'm doing great, actually. Can I come in? They led me to their living room, and I went through the same routine. The photos, the bank records, the timeline of lies. Shay's face went from nervous to shocked to angry. That witch, she said finally. She played us all. She played everyone, I agreed. But it's over now. What do you need from us? Mike asked. Just the truth. When people ask about what happened, tell them what you know now. Don't let her keep playing the victim. I made similar visits to 3 other couples. People who'd been at the birthday party. People who'd heard Bernice's lies about me. By the end of the evening, the narrative was already starting to change, but I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I drove to Salvador's real estate office. He was at his desk, looking stressed and tired. Dad, he said when he saw me, thank God, we need to talk. Yes, we do. I sat down across from his desk and pulled out a folder. Salvador, I want you to look at something. I showed him the photos, the bank statements, the evidence of his mother's affair. His face went white. Dad, I had no idea. Your mother has been lying to all of us about the affair, about me being controlling, about me being unstable. She orchestrated that whole intervention to cover her tracks and make herself look like the victim. Salvador was staring at the evidence, but she seemed so scared, so convinced that you were dangerous. I'm not dangerous, son. I'm just tired of being lied to. He was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, What about the money? The mortgage payment? What about it? I can't afford it without your help. You know that. I leaned back in my chair. Salvador, you're 29 years old. You have a college degree and a real estate license. You're a grown man. Why can't you afford your own mortgage? Because the market's been slow, and the market's been slow for 2 years. What have you been doing to adapt? What have you been doing to improve your situation? He didn't have an answer. Son, I've been enabling you, all of you. I've been making it so easy for you to depend on me that you never learned to depend on yourselves. So you're just going to cut us off, your own sons? You cut me off first, remember? You decided you didn't want to be Wilson's anymore. That was just paperwork. No, it wasn't. It was a choice. You chose to believe your mother's lies over 29 years of me being there for you. You chose to humiliate me in public. You chose to reject everything I am and everything I've built. Salvador was crying now. Dad, I'm sorry. We made a mistake. Yes, you did. And now you have to live with the consequences. I stood up to leave. Dad, wait. What if we changed our names back? What if we apologized publicly? I paused at the door. What if you did? Would you help us again? I thought about that. Salvador, do you love me? Of course I do. Do you respect me? Yes. Do you trust me? He hesitated. Yes. Then why did you believe her so easily? Why was it so simple for her to convince you that I was the problem? He didn't have an answer for that either. When you figure that out, I said, give me a call. I made similar visits to Franklin and Damien. Franklin was belligerent at first, then desperate. Damien was just heartbroken, but the message was the same. They'd made their choice, and now they had to live with it. By the end of the week, the truth was spreading through our social circle like wildfire. Bernice's victim narrative was crumbling, and people were starting to see her for what she really was. But I still wasn't satisfied. The final confrontation came 2 weeks later at Murphy's Brewery. It wasn't planned, at least not by me. I was there having dinner with Harold and Linda, trying to rebuild our friendship, when Bernice walked in with Troy and her sister Carmen. She saw me immediately and froze. Troy, on the other hand, puffed up like a rooster and started walking toward our table. Well, he said, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. If it isn't the crazy ex-husband. The place went quiet. Everyone was staring. I stood up slowly. Hello, Troy. How's the face? His hand went instinctively to his cheek where I'd slapped him. You sucker punched me, old man. I slapped you, and it wasn't a sucker punch. You saw it coming. He took a step closer. You want to try that again? Not particularly, but if you insist on making a scene, I'm happy to accommodate you. Bernice appeared at his elbow. Troy, don't. Let's just go. But Troy was feeling his oats. He had an audience, and he wanted to show off. You know what your problem is, Eugene? You can't handle the fact that your wife chose a real man over you. The restaurant was dead silent now. Even the kitchen staff had stopped working to watch. A real man, I repeated. Is that what you call someone who sleeps with married women and helps them lie to their families? I call it someone who can satisfy a woman, something you obviously couldn't do. That got a reaction from the crowd. A few people gasped, others muttered. I smiled. Troy, you're absolutely right. I couldn't satisfy my wife. But then again, neither could the personal trainer before you, or the yoga instructor before him, or the tennis pro before him. Bernice went white. Eugene, don't... Oh, I'm sorry. Did you think Troy was special? Did you think he was the first? I pulled out my phone and started scrolling through the photos I'd collected. Let's see. There was Marcus from the country club. That was 2 years ago. Before that was David from her book club, though I don't think they did much reading. And before that was... Stop, Bernice whispered, but I was just getting started. The thing is, Troy, you're not her first affair. You're not even her second or third. You're just the latest in a long line of men she's used to feel better about herself. Troy was looking at Bernice with confusion and growing anger. What's he talking about? He's lying, she said, but her voice was shaking. Am I? Troy, ask her about the hotel charges from 3 years ago. Ask her about the credit card bills for restaurants she went to while I was working overtime to pay for our son's college. Ask her about the mysterious girls' nights out that lasted until 3 in the morning. The crowd was hanging on every word. This was better than reality TV. Troy turned to Bernice. Is he telling the truth? She couldn't meet his eyes. Jesus Christ, he said. You played me. Troy, it's not like that. How many others were there? She didn't answer. Troy looked around the restaurant, suddenly realizing that everyone was staring at him. The big, tough guy who thought he was stealing another man's wife, only to find out he was just the latest in a long line of suckers. You know what? He said to me. You can have her back. She's all yours. He walked out, leaving Bernice standing there alone. The restaurant was still dead quiet. Everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. I looked at my wife of 23 years. She was crying, her makeup running, her carefully constructed facade finally crumbling. Eugene, she said quietly, please, can we go somewhere and talk? I thought about it. Part of me, the part that had loved her for more than 2 decades, wanted to say yes, wanted to try to work things out, to find some way to rebuild what we'd had. But then I remembered the birthday party, the lies, the way she'd turned my own children against me, the months of systematic betrayal and manipulation. No, I said, we're done talking. I turned to address the restaurant. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption, but I wanted you all to hear the truth, since my wife has been telling everyone who will listen that I'm a controlling husband who mistreated her and drove her into the arms of another man. I gestured toward Bernice. The truth is that my wife is a serial cheater who has been lying to everyone, including her boyfriends, for years. She's been using our joint money to fund her affairs while painting me as the villain to cover her tracks. The crowd was riveted. She convinced our 3 sons that I was dangerous and unstable. She had them change their names because she didn't want them associated with me. She organized an intervention designed to make me look crazy so that when she left me for her latest boyfriend, everyone would think she was the victim. Bernice was sobbing now, but I wasn't done. But the thing is, she's not a victim. She's a predator. She preys on people's sympathy and trust. She lies so convincingly that even people who've known me for years started to believe I was capable of violence. I pulled out the folder of evidence I'd been carrying around for weeks. I have bank statements, credit card bills, photographs, and text messages that prove everything I'm saying. Anyone who wants to see them is welcome to look. Several people actually raised their hands. I handed the folder to Harold. Pass it around. Let everyone see what a real liar looks like. Bernice tried to run, but Carmen grabbed her arm. Bernice, is this true? She nodded miserably. The restaurant erupted in conversation. People were passing around the evidence, looking at the photos, reading the bank statements. The story was spreading in real time. I sat back down and finished my dinner while my wife's reputation burned down around her. When I was done eating, I stood up and walked over to where she was sitting with her sister. Bernice, I said quietly, the divorce papers will be finalized next week. You'll get exactly what the law says you're entitled to. Half of our marital assets, minus what you spent on your affairs. My lawyer estimates that'll be about 30% of the total. She looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Eugene, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. No, I'm sorry I hurt you. I'm sorry I lied. I'm sorry I turned the boys against you. I studied her face, looking for any sign of genuine remorse. What I saw was a woman who was sorry her plan had failed. Sorry her lies had been exposed. Sorry she was facing consequences for her actions. But I didn't see any real understanding of what she'd done to our family. Goodbye, Bernice, I said. I walked out of the restaurant to spontaneous applause. 3 months later, the divorce was final. I kept the house, the business, and my dignity. Bernice got her share of the assets and moved to another state with her sister. My sons eventually came around. It took time and a lot of honest conversations, but they slowly began to understand how thoroughly they'd been manipulated. Salvador and Damien changed their names back to Wilson. Franklin is still thinking about it. Harold and I rebuilt our friendship. He learned a valuable lesson about believing accusations without evidence, and I learned that even good people can be fooled by convincing liars. As for Troy, I heard he moved back in with his mother and started going to therapy. Apparently, being publicly humiliated as a serial homewrecker was a wake-up call for him. And me? I'm doing better than I have in years. I've got my business, my house, my self-respect, and the truth on my side. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes that's everything.